timely topic and some great guest speakers. It's so nice to see you all this morning. As many of you know, January is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. 3 of CDPS's divisions are involved in the work to combat this often hidden crime. We have 2 special guests today to talk about human trafficking, but first we have a short video explaining how our department fights human trafficking. So I will turn it to Patricia to play that video.
It was supposed to be a traveling sales opportunity and a new family of sorts, but I owed for gas, food, places to stay. I was a hostage.
Human trafficking is a really big problem across our country, and specifically is a problem here in Colorado.
The Colorado Department of Public Safety combats human trafficking through multiple divisions: the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the Colorado State Patrol, and the Colorado Division of Criminal Justice. Partner with our communities to provide education, prevention, outreach, investigation, and interdiction.
The Colorado Human Trafficking Council does a breadth of things to address human trafficking in our state. It's a 35-member board that develops training standards and curricula and delivers training all across the state. We also do public awareness campaigns, and for the last 2 years we've been working on that campaign. We also provide statutory recommendations for changes in our law, and we also do data collection.
Colorado Bureau of Investigation assists local law enforcement agencies and federal law enforcement agencies with human trafficking cases and sex crimes cases, all the way from the local to the federal level, to bring arrest of sexual predators. We will normally get a case from a local law enforcement agency and will help with our investigation anywhere from search warrants to analytical support, doing undercover work, all of those to ultimately come to an arrest of a sexual predator. In the past year, we've had 54 arrests between 8 operations, working with, again, federal agencies and local law enforcement agencies.
The Colorado State Patrol has a team specifically focused on human trafficking called the Smuggling, Trafficking, and Interdiction Section. STIFs made 1,089 stops on Colorado's highways in 2020 where they seized contraband. They made 4 arrests for human trafficking. This unit also provides training on interdiction for the protection of missing and endangered children. All of the members of the Colorado State Patrol are trained to spot indications of human trafficking. This includes our State Patrol Port of Entry. Perceptive Port of Entry officers recently identified a case out of Fort Collins where they suspected an individual was being trafficked across state lines. They radioed ahead to Wyoming Highway Patrol, who arrested the suspect on an existing child sexual abuse warrant.
If you suspect human trafficking is happening to you or someone you know, please report that information to the Colorado Human Trafficking Hotline. The number is 1-866-455-5075.
You can be part of our crime-fighting team. Find out more at thisishumantrafficking.com.
Wow, great video, everyone. Really nicely done and really informative about the work that our divisions do on this important topic. Now I'd like to introduce our 2 guest speakers. Jill Brogden was recently hired as a grants financial manager for the Division of Criminal Justice's Office for Victims Programs, and she's the former vice chair and survivor representative of the Human Trafficking Council. And Maria Trujillo is the program manager for the Colorado Human Trafficking Council and has been integral in building this council from the ground up. So welcome, Jill and Maria, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Jana. I appreciate that. I'm going to get started with sharing my screen. First, I just want to say thank you for taking a moment to bring attention to this important topic, especially during January, which is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. We've been doing events, activities all throughout the month, and I'm glad to see the department bringing attention to this important issue. And so we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth about the issue of human trafficking, And then I will turn it over to Jill to talk about her experience and all the amazing things that she has done to address this issue, and go from there and answer any questions that you might have. So first, I want to just make sure that everyone understands that human trafficking has two different arms. One is sex trafficking and one is labor trafficking. And the same is true in our state statute. Many people, one of the big misperceptions about human trafficking is that all human trafficking is sex trafficking, or that human trafficking is synonymous with the term sex trafficking. And in reality, there is plenty of labor trafficking that occurs across the globe. And actually, the vast majority of human trafficking is labor trafficking versus sex trafficking, even though sex trafficking gets more of the attention from the media and from movies and things like that. And even in our own state, we've had hundreds of labor trafficking clients being served by our federal funded service providers. So many people are being served by many labor trafficking victims are being served by service providers. However, when we look at the efforts of law enforcement and the prosecution side of things, we see that a vast majority of sex trafficking cases are being investigated. And so there's a bit of a disconnect there. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. One being that people who are involved in labor trafficking may not feel comfortable coming to law enforcement with their story, or maybe are just not in a place to be a part of a long investigation and trial. For example, one of the first involuntary servitude cases that was convicted in Colorado in Denver County was the result of a 3-year investigation and trial. So that's just to show that these types of cases take a really long time, especially when you focus on being trauma-informed and victim-centered with your investigation, which the Denver District Attorney's Office did. It actually started out as a domestic violence situation that came to the Rose Andom Center for domestic violence, and turned out that there was a lot more that was happening in that situation, and they were able to charge and get a conviction on involuntary servitude, the trafficker being the husband. So I think that's another thing that people have misconceptions about, that traffickers are often, some stranger that's picking someone up and throwing them in a white van. It's always a white van, and kidnapping them off the street. When in reality, more often than not, a trafficker is in fact someone that the person knows and has built trust and rapport with, like a husband, like an intimate partner, like a family member, like someone that in an employer, and that they believe that this employer was trying to get them the job that they're looking for, and turns out that there's an actual trafficking situation. And we'll show a couple of videos from the campaign that illustrate this dynamic. So one of the main reasons why trafficking is prevalent is about vulnerability, not about if you're a foreign national or a US citizen, or if you're male or female, or if you are an adult versus a child or anything like that. It's about vulnerabilities. What vulnerabilities does someone possess that a trafficker can manipulate? So we have a lot of people here. I'm going to just have a quick ask of everyone. Throw a vulnerability that you think would be something that would make someone more vulnerable to trafficking in the chat real quick. We'll take like 1 minute to see what people have to say. We have age, mental health struggles, money, lack of money, homelessness, economic vulnerability. Awesome. Lack of support, bad home life, and identifying as LGBTQ youth, substance abuse or substance use in the house. That's totally valid. Trauma survivor, someone who's already experienced past trauma with unrelated to trafficking that makes them more vulnerable. You all are awesome and are very correct with those types of vulnerabilities. A lot of the things that you listed are here. I think one of the things I'll say is like just someone who has a lack of opportunities, someone who has low self-esteem, like they just don't have the confidence and lack that community support. Just someone who dreams of a better life, who will be able to provide for their family. And sometimes cultural differences play in. And then something that hadn't been said is prior child welfare and juvenile justice involvement is definitely a vulnerability to trafficking, because obviously there's trauma in situations that are happening that got that person in child welfare or juvenile justice in the first place. So next I'm going to show you two videos that are part of our campaign. They're both 30 seconds, and we've been showing these all over the state. And actually coming up during the Super Bowl, we will be showing, be able to have the opportunity to show these commercials before and after the Super Bowl, not during, because that was cost prohibitive, as many people know about Super Bowl commercials. And then also these commercials will be showing during the Winter Olympics that is coming up. So I'm going to go to YouTube to better share this here. And this is Elena's story.
You saw me, or someone like me. You didn't like what you saw. What you didn't see was how he lied to me, made money off me, threatened me, forced me to do things. You didn't see I needed help.
This is human trafficking. It is a crime. If you suspect this is happening to you or someone you know or have seen, go to thisishumantrafficking.com.
Then I'm going to show one more.
Shut the door in my face. You were scared.
Oh, goodness. YouTube is taking over my screen. Sorry. Okay, one more time. They're short, so.
I miss having dinner with my family. I found this job in Colorado through a recruiter so I could make money to send back to them. But none of us have been paid. We're forced to work in different places, and we're always being watched. I wish I could tell someone. I wish I could tell you, but you're having dinner with your family.
This is human trafficking. If you suspect this is happening to you or someone else, go to thisishumantrafficking.com.
So the importance of sharing these two stories, one, I'll say that they were all based on real experiences of human trafficking survivors that we consulted with, but they're collaborations of different stories to protect the privacy of the individuals. And then, but we also really wanted to make sure that people understood both types of human trafficking. That's really wanted to present to you here today, is to really illustrate that human trafficking is both sex trafficking and labor trafficking, and these are very different trafficking situations. Elena is a young woman who, you know, started a relationship with an intimate partner that then turned into a sex trafficking situation. Antonio's story is about someone who is just looking for a better job, got a legal visa to come to the United States. He had experience working in the restaurant industry and thought he was doing everything correctly, and all he really wanted to do was make more money to send back to his family and to support himself, and that turned into trafficking. And so that's just wanted to illustrate those two things. And then I will turn it over to Jill in just a second, just to give you all a sense of how the work of the Colorado Human Trafficking Council. And my job there is in 2014, House Bill 14-1273 was passed, and it was based on this Uniform Crime Code report that was published in 2013. And some of the big things that it did was change the state criminal statutes of human trafficking to better align with federal law, which made a huge difference in our ability to prosecute cases. And we see that in the numbers. We have far more prosecutions than we ever had before. We had a state law in 2006, but only had 3 convictions on that state law from 2006 to 2014. Now we have many, many more convictions over the last 7 years. As the video stated that Patricia put together, it established a Colorado Human Trafficking Council, which is a 35-member board. The council is housed within public safety and the Division of Criminal Justice. And the council is tasked with 9 different mandates when it was first started, as was mentioned in the video. And we'll talk a little bit more about one specifically as we go through this presentation. And Jill, I'm going to turn it over to you. Meet Jill Brogden, the most amazing human being. And she's going to talk a little bit about herself and the wonderful work that she's done over the last 7 years.
Thanks, Maria. So I am the former vice chair of the council. When I started my position here with Office of Victims Programs, I had to resign due to conflict of interest. But back in 2014, I was a member of the Survivor Task Force for the Colorado Coalition Against Sexual Assault. And they shared that there was the opportunity to become a survivor representative on the council. And when they approached me, I said, well, that's not me. I wasn't trafficked. And I had the same idea in my mind that many Colorado citizens have, that trafficking doesn't happen in the United States, that it certainly doesn't happen in Colorado. But after I read the definition, I realized that that language fit exactly what had happened to me. And it was a real eye-opener, as you can imagine. So I sat on the council and eventually became a subject matter expert from learning from all of the other 33 members. One of the mandates of the council, of the law, was that there be 2 survivor representatives initially on the council, one representing sex trafficking and one representing labor trafficking. So I sat on the council as a sex trafficking survivor. Near and dear to my heart was to help change the law of the statute of limitations for child sexual abuse. Back in 2003 is when I started this journey with CCASA, and my quest was to get the statute of limitations lifted for child sexual abuse. At that time, it was 6 years from the date you turned 18 to when you had 6 years from that date to file charges against your abuser. And that's just not enough. You're not aware enough, really. You're still coming out of the trauma, and you don't really have that ability the cognitive ability to say, hey, I'm going to go prosecute this person. Most people don't. So it's very unrealistic to be able to prosecute within those 6 years. And it was my goal to help get that statute lifted. For me, the statute of limitations expired long before I could do anything about what happened to me. So I moved on and got on the council. And this past year, there was CCASA again introduced legislation to get the statute of limitations lifted. And I had the honor and privilege of testifying to get that statute lifted. And I testified, that was Senate Bill 73, which was a companion to Senate Bill 88, which holds institutions that knew or should have known accountable for sex abuse that was happening within their institute. So the whole bill was called the Child Sexual Abuse Accountability Act. And I had the honor and privilege of testifying in front of the House Judiciary Committee on both bills. Senate Bill 73 passed in March of last year, and I actually got to speak at the signing of when the governor signed the bill into law, which was a great honor and privilege of mine. And then the companion bill of that was to hold institutes accountable. And that one also was very important to me, as my trafficking situation took place in a school. So, and I had no recourse because the statute of limitations was in my way. So this one is actually retroactive and would give me the opportunity to file charges against the school system for allowing this to happen on their property. That bill passed narrowly 6-5, and I'm proud to say that if you ever are told to write a senator about a bill, please do it, because it works. I I'll never forget that night in June when I stayed up until about 1 a.m. sending letters to all of the senators, one of whom actually worked for the school district where my trafficking took place. And my email to her was what changed her mind. And if that didn't happen, it wouldn't have passed. It passed 6-5. And so I'm very honored that that happened. And now no one will ever have to hear, I'm sorry, you have a great case, but we can't help you because the statute of limitations is expired. And further, they'll never have to hear, sorry, you can't sue the institution, because they can now. So along with that, I also do public speaking. Later in the year, I did receive the 2021 CICASA Survivor Activist Award. And that's the first time I've ever received an award, and it feels very good. And then I got the job with CDPS and get to continue working on this topic even without being on the council. And so part of that is I also do a lot of public speaking around the state and a few national environments. And you can go to the next slide, Maria. So part of the legislative mandate of the bill, the 14-1273, was to implement the implementation plan for the development of the public awareness campaign that will educate the public about human trafficking, place victim services, contact information in places where victims of human trafficking are likely to see it. So it's to pretty much plaster the information around the whole state, particularly in rural communities also, because they don't get the same traffic, or I don't want to use the word traffic. They don't get the same footprint as the more concentrated urban areas. So it's important that we get this out into the rural communities as well. Next slide. And so that leads us to our campaign audience, which is the jury box is there because if you think of a jury, you have a sampling of people from all around the community in different walks of life. And that's kind of our goal, was to disseminate this information out to the whole public so that we could reach all corners of the state and teach them about all types of trafficking in the state of Colorado. So there were 3 formative phases of research in the campaign. In 2017 is when the campaign working group started, and I joined that working group and still have the honor of participating in the working group as a survivor representative, and I help inform that campaign. The first phase was the campaign and evaluation plan, which was a statewide public survey. So we went all around the state to everyone. Not everyone, but a good sampling of it. And then, well, of course, we have key informants of survivors. They conducted survivor interviews of myself and several other survivors around the state. The next phase was the creative concept, where we had further discussion groups with regional stakeholders, conducted online surveys with regional stakeholders, reached out to survivors online, and also had a discussion panel with survivors to really make sure that we got a good broad concept of everyone's idea of trafficking and how this would impact the state. Then the final phase was to finally develop the campaign materials. And we conducted, again, another general public concept online survey, and held stakeholder virtual discussion groups to get their ideas on what would be effective in their community. And then we also conducted further survivor-informed virtual work groups and online secondary research. So as you can see, survivors were involved throughout the whole process of informing the campaign, which to me is obviously very important. But it would be difficult to run this campaign without having the perspective of a survivor on the campaign.
And Jill, why did you want to talk about this campaign as part of our presentation today?
Well, when I first started on the council, that was my first thought was, why aren't we telling everybody about this? Because I didn't know, and it happened to me. So I was thinking we have to get this out into the community. And it also, of course, felt very important that someone like me and many other survivors could inform, because they need to have our perspective of what it looks like to be trafficked, how you can overcome it, and how to take action, how to report to this crime.
Thanks, Jill. And so this just shows you the concept strategy that we had for the campaign, kind of what Jill was talking about. And then I'm just going to show you a few of our creative pieces. This is signage that we have at the Denver International Airport. These are really large diorama signs. They're probably 10 feet tall, and they're in all three concourses. We also have light rail wraps. So we have 3 cars on the light rail system that have our campaign materials, and that's going to be running until June. So if anyone takes a light rail or sees a light rail, please send me a picture. Don't stop traffic to do that, but if you could take a picture, please send them to me, because I only have seen it once. So I'm trying to stalk the light rails to see them all. And then we also made a really important point that we wanted all of our materials to be both in English and Spanish. So we also have a Spanish media buy where we have all of our commercials in Spanish, our radio commercials in Spanish, and we're also doing advertising on different Spanish language websites. The bottom here part is signage inside the light rail. So the outside of the light rail wrap is really focused on general awareness. But the difference, as you can see with this wording, is really to focus on victims that might be on the light rail, to give them information. And all of our materials also we started having a QR code. So people could just scan the QR code and it'll go to our website. And the next phase of some of our victim-centered materials is to have the QR code go to a V card and put the Colorado Human Trafficking hotline number into someone's phone, but not to be conspicuous. So maybe having like it called Pizza Hut or something like that. So to give people who are potential victims an easy way to access the hotline number. And then this is obviously a bus shelter that we had up during the stock show. We wanted people to be aware that exploitation happens during large events, not just the Super Bowl. And we've actually had a human trafficking case happen during the stock show several years ago. And this is just signage that we have in restrooms, in restaurants, and at gas stations. We have posters and clings. And I just wanted to give you a sense of what the success has been for a full year of the campaign. The Colorado Human Trafficking Hotline usually saw a much greater increase in calls and texts and tips from 2020. They typically see a 20% increase in their call volume. And as you can see, they had an overall increase of actually 45% last year. And also in tips, look at this, in one quarter, we had an 89% increase from the year before. And with referrals, we had an over 100% increase in referrals in 2 of the quarters. So we're really happy and are excited about these numbers and showing the impact of the campaign. We had a 300% increase in calls from Spanish speakers, which is really awesome. And 9% of all the calls in 2021 referenced the campaign in particular. So in closing, I just wanted to let you all know, if you want to learn more about human trafficking, to close out National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, the Colorado Human Trafficking Council is hosting a panel discussion today and tomorrow to actually focus on the first involuntary servitude case that was convicted in Denver County. It's a very interesting case that we really dive into it and all the different dynamics that took place. So if you're interested, It's happening today at 12. We'll be streaming 3 different times, one at 12 o'clock today, and again at 4:30 today, and then tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. It's going to be on our streamed on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channels. And you just go there and see the panel discussion. So I invite you all to join if you're interested in learning more. And that is it for us. Please let me know. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Feel free to put your questions in the chat, or you can unmute and ask Maria and Jill your questions.
Maria and Jill, thank you so much. While folks are thinking about questions, thank you so much for this presentation. And Jill, thanks for sharing your story. You are an example of amazing advocacy and really illustrate what one person can do at the legislature just by exerting some influence. So appreciate that. And Maria, as always, thanks for your leadership and innovation on this important topic. I had a couple of observations I wanted to share. One is just, again, how individuals can influence the legislative process. It's really accessible to a variety of people, and Jill's story is an example of that. And then two, as Maria said, this Human Trafficking Council was created by a piece of legislation in 2014, and it's just one example of how CDPS leans into and takes on important topics. And for those of you who work in and around the Capitol, or in stakeholder groups, you probably are aware that our department has a really strong reputation for taking on new and hard topics and doing really well with them. And this is just an illustration of that. Maria, didn't this campaign get some national accolades as well?
It did. I have a few awards behind me. If you see in my background, this campaign won an Emmy in the Heartland chapter, and just waiting to receive that award in the mail. And then it also received 2 Telly Awards, a Communicator Award for Social Responsibility campaign, and also a 1 Denver Award for our commercial. So we got a lot of different awards and recognition for the campaign that we developed, and maybe there'll be more to come.
That's amazing. I hope so. Looks like there is one question in the chat. Can you speak a little about whether human trafficking victims can be reluctant to come forward because of legal issues they may face after exposing their traffickers?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually something that is discussed in the panel that we're hosting this afternoon. But yeah, well, oftentimes victims are reluctant to come to law enforcement because they've been forced to participate in a crime, and that is also held over their head by the trafficker, and saying, like, if you go to the police, then I'll tell them about the crimes that you committed, and you'll be the one that goes to jail, not me. And so what the Denver District Attorney's Office was often saying is that they regularly get requests for immunity, so victims can be honest and open with their situation and not feel any fear about being convicted of the crimes that they committed. There's also some legislation that actually potentially being considered this year about talking about vacatur and expungement of those crimes that were committed during someone's trafficking situation. The council actually looked at that all last year and made some recommendations because we wanted people to not fear going to law enforcement because of those potential crimes, and also wanted people to a lot of times those crimes also really are held over their head as they exit the situation of human trafficking, and it makes it more difficult to get a job, to get housing, to open a bank account. So having opportunities to help with that is really important.
Thank you, Maria. And it looks like Patricia put the Facebook links to the events that Maria mentioned in the chat. So if you're interested in one of those today or tomorrow, those links are in there. Any other questions for Maria or Jill? Maria or Jill, any final comments or thoughts?
Just to say thank you for letting us speak today and bring the attention to this important topic, as I said at the beginning. And I really hope people will join us for our panel. And also, this is not, human trafficking happens all year round. It's not just in January. where we bring attention to it. And so please always keep your eyes and ears open. That Colorado Human Trafficking hotline number is really important. If you just have a gut feeling, to just call that number. And we have amazing people here at CDPS that investigate the crime, and also amazing law enforcement all throughout the state that will be there to help. And I'll turn it over to Jill.
I just want to say thank you for listening. It's truly, I never in my life imagined that I would be talking about a crime that happened to me and helping spread awareness around the state. So to me, every time I get the opportunity to speak to people, it's exciting to me, because I feel like that's even more eyes out there helping survivors and victims come out of this crime and have an opportunity to improve their life situation. So I'm always honored when people are listening. So thank you for listening.
Well, we are honored to have you working with us, and also honored to have you today to talk about this topic. So appreciate that. There's a lot of great feedback in the chat as well, just appreciating your information and your stories. So I think this is a topic that folks were interested in hearing about. In closing, I just have a couple of general updates, and then I'll open it up for questions. We talked a lot about the legislative process as it relates to human trafficking. As a lot of you know, the legislative session is currently happening right now. It happens every year from January to May. Public safety has a variety of bills that we are working on, both that we are leading and that we will be responding to. Chief among our priorities this year, you might have heard about them, is we are part of a comprehensive public safety package that the governor is putting forward to reduce crime rates and increase public safety across the state. DCJ has been really involved in crafting this, so big shout out to them. There are multiple parts of it that are going to be in legislation or bills this coming session. And another big priority that we have is a budget request to right-size the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, which is relatively small compared to its counterparts across the state. So those are just a few of our key priorities. There are a number of other budget requests that we have, including increasing capital security and other legislative items that we have as well. If you are contacted by a member of budget or legislative staff, please get with our budget director, Terry Anderley, or our legislative liaisons, Joel Maleka or Captain Mike Hahn, and funnel your responses through them. That's really important to keep that kind of single point of contact for our department. So appreciate in advance and all the work that all of you are doing around legislative items. If you have any questions, those are also great resources, Joel and Mike, to ask about any legislation that you see. And a reminder that if you are going to be testifying on bills as a private citizen, to please also let them know about that and work with your supervisor about what kind of leave you need to take to do that. Next kind of administrative update is you may have seen that the employee engagement survey has been extended until Friday. It was going to close today, but DPA extended the closure date until Friday, February 4th. So if you have not taken the employee engagement survey, please do that this week. It's really important. This only comes about every 2 years, the statewide employee engagement survey. And we do use those findings to shape policies, shape direction, shape initiatives inside our department based on employee feedback. So this is really your opportunity to share a good, bad, neutral, any feedback you want to provide. Please use this survey to do so. It is anonymous. We don't deaggregate the data to get into individual data. We take it as in an aggregate way, either by work group or division or by department as a whole. So if you have not taken it, please do so. If you have, thank you in advance. And if you need a chuckle, please look at the video that Patricia sent out on Friday from Trooper Josh Lewis, encouraging participation in the employee engagement survey. Any questions about anything we covered today or anything else? You can unmute or you can put them in the chat. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Patricia, any final thoughts or housekeeping items?
I think that's it. Our next planned event will be our Black History Month presentation in February, and we'll be sending out more information about that. Alberta, I don't know if you want to give a quick plug for that, since we've got 5 minutes left before we let people go.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, thanks everyone for supporting the Lunch and Learns. And I want to thank EDO for supporting these discussions. Like Janice said, you know, we've had some really tough conversations, and EDO has not, CDPS has not shied away from these, and they've been really good discussions. And I can see by the numbers and just the participation in this, it's amazing. These are all very helpful and really good, made to raise awareness to a lot of these very important topics. So we have Hassan Latif. He's with the Second Chance Center, and he will tell his story. He is also a motivational speaker, and we'll just wait to hear what he has to say. You know, he's got some really deep personal things that have driven him to do great things in our community. So you won't want to miss that as well. So thank you, Patricia, for allowing me to give a plug for that.
Thanks, Alberta. That sounds like a very interesting topic as well. Look forward to that. All right, last call. Charlotte, I see you asked, where will the recording be housed? Patricia, where will this recording be housed?
Yes, we post the recordings to the intranet homepage. After we get that, it usually takes a couple of hours for Google to finish processing it, and then we'll put that up on the intranet homepage.
Thank you. All right, everyone, thank you so much for your time and attention today. And again, thank you to our guest speakers for your work and your time today. We appreciate it. Happy last day of January, everyone. We will see you next month, if not before.